Okay, so the slide and is going to gainfully place Thank you very much, George, and apologies, you've got me again, and apologies, I will be looking at my notes because Claire should have been delivering this, but sadly can't be with us. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to give you a very brief sort of look at what we've done at our Somerset Centre in terms of implementing the 5 domains framework for animal welfare. Many of you will know horse welfare, some of you might not, but we're a charity that's almost a century old, and at the heart of what horse welfare is all about is to support the horse-human relationship in all of its different forms. And of course, today we're very much focused on that sort of sport and leisure form, but of course, you know, most horses and donkeys and mules are still used as working animals around the world. So there's obviously a global perspective to what we do. And very simplistically, it seems to, can you see this? It seems to be on the way around. You know, there's 4 key aspects. You know, we care. We have 4 centres around the country and run community-based projects in around 20 countries around the world. And so we have that sort of frontline experience, which helps inform our sort of data for our research. So we can actually try and unpick what the root causes of equine welfare challenges and opportunities are. We use all of that to inform our education, where we provide it in multiple formats to owners across the world. And hopefully all of that gives us an ability, because whilst we can implement and impact individual horses' lives between the way we care for them, we can actually influence millions of horses' lives if we can change policy, practice and legislation. So we've obviously already talked about this briefly around the 5 domains model and what actually it is. Now, the 5 freedoms that we talked about earlier, that is the underpinning, as Ben had said, for the Animal Welfare Act. But there's 2 big changes with the 5 domains model, is the fact that, as we talked about earlier, it highlights the mental welfare of our animals and how those 4 functional domains around the outside all influence the mental welfare of our horses, but also the importance of these behavioural interactions with their environment, with other horses, and of course with us as people, and that has a really strong impact on their welfare. So that's all very good, but how do we actually understand what's happening at a horse level at home or in a yard? Now, I think Lisa mentioned Christina Wilkins. Now, she is at the University of New England, rather confusingly, is on Australia, and she has got a great online course, which I think, George, ABRS members still get a discount for, is that right? Yeah, we're the only organisation that she's granted a discount to, so we get a 50% discount on the course. So, and that's brilliant for looking at the horse at an individual level. But obviously, when we're trying to look at it at a yard level, what does that mean? And I've got, hopefully this will be especially relevant to you all. It was certainly why we undertook it at our centres. So Christina introduced us to this lady called Jill Fernandez, who's an independent animal welfare consultant who runs her own consultancy, Animal Centric, based in Australia. Now, she's done a huge amount of work with zoos and aquariums across Australia, embedding the 5 domains model into their welfare assessment protocols and wider practice. So we thought it'd be brilliant to get someone from outside the sector to come and really challenge what we're doing at one of our centres initially, and we've rolled it out to all the other 3 this year. So she came over last October. She spent a week with the team in Somerset and helped us to devise a horse-focused yard-based assessment tool. And the next few slides are just going to talk us through what that's all about. So what were our goals? Well, ultimately, our goal was to develop this welfare assessment tool and see if Ben can get this in Acronym City later on, the welfare assessment of horses in yards. And we wanted, obviously, to work for this as an organisational, but potentially then to be able to roll it out to others and the wider industry. And a key aspect of this, it involved everyone on the farm team, from the groom, the manager, the maintenance team. And really to try and get a level playing field where we get the best view of what our horses and what's our understanding of the 5 domains. And then the team then took that knowledge forward to score welfare criteria we had previously identified, thinking of each of the examples that had a negative experience and consider what could be done for those horses differently in the future. Now, the outcome of that scoring process was a fairly monumental challenge, and it prioritised by school for the farm to then delegate between staff members and the management team in line with wider strategic planning and budgets, and we'll come on to that in a second. And when we completed that actions, a key element of this was to get feedback from the horses, using behavioural observations to determine reliable animal-based measures to assess whether the interventions we were undertaking had the desired effect on the ponies and horses in our care. So, you obviously won't be able to see this, but it was a Herculean team effort, as I mentioned. And you can just see how much data was collected through the workshop. Over 40 welfare criteria split across the 5 domains were identified. And for many of these, there was a subdivision based on how long the horses had been in the yard, of which part of the yard they were habituated to mostly, whether they were in fields, crew barns, the American barn, or the quarantine isolation unit. And the criteria covered everything from the provision of a suitable diet to the degree of choices that the animals had in their environment. And also, when we think about taking in stallions, even the influence of restricting sexual behaviours. And the criteria reflected this diverse requirement of horses as a species and really challenged us in some areas to critically evaluate what we were doing was enough. And in terms of the scoring, it could range from unknown, if there was not enough evidence to be able to reliably give a 0, then there was give a score, sorry, then it was numbered 1 to 5, where 1 was poor and 5 was excellent, and no further actions obviously were required. Now, the staff did deliberate a lot and agreed a score for each criteria with the factors. Can you imagine when you've got a number of different people from different perspectives coming in, you can see it did take quite a long time. Now, it's really important, and it was actually quite not something we'd realised before we started that, but actually if you were scoring at the most challenging time, at the lowest point or the best point, then actually you can get very disparate scores and you can actually get some fairly low scores. But the key lesson for us was not to be disheartened by that, because that's where you can have maximum impact. So when we say a monumental effort, there was 325 actions identified. Don't worry, this is just a pilot of us identifying it and how we worked it through. Now, some of those were really minor and easily implementable, like getting more browse for horses that are stabled or in crew barns, whereas others required a bit more effort, planning and resourcing behind them, such as resurfacing gateway entrances, planting trees or hedges, or removing partition on stables. And the scores span the whole spectrum, which allowed us to really reflect on what we are doing well and where it's clear we need to rethink our approach. And as I said already, it's really important not to be disheartened by these low scores, because these are based on individual horses that had the worst experience and may not truly reflect the experience of most of the horses. But unless you challenge yourself to ask why, we're not going to improve. And then ultimately, this is going to roll into a longer term plan, or as Jill called it, a welfare horizon document, which is based on feedback from the team and when she spoke to all of them through staff interviews. And the document highlighted the key overarching themes that the staff at Somerset would like to embed over the next 5 to 10 years. So you're looking a long way in advance. And it also acts as a really useful thing to help actually where we need to fund these changes, how we can do that in a realistic way. So what did this mean in practice? Well, firstly, teamwork. The staff worked together to decide to score, decide actions, and implement them. This was hugely beneficial. It increases communication between the team, the whole team, and for those who would like more responsibility, it actually got people to really challenge it for themselves and to take that opportunity. And obviously it helps keep everyone on the same page when we're trying to sort of evolve. Now, secondly, budgets and resourcing. Outputs can certainly inform wider planning and budgets, and can open a dialogue with the team about what can be done immediately and what may need to wait for further funding, helping set expectations about how soon some actions can be delivered, as well as those that may not be feasible at all. Thirdly, creativity. The workshops and the scoring sessions were a really good way to foster any ideas, however balmy initially they may seem, or however small they may seem. For example, one possible action for stopping water troughs from freezing at Somerset was to add large rubber ducks to all of them. All ideas welcome. So the fourth was behavioural observations. The team sessions allowed us to identify what the behaviours the team can easily identify and where there was room for CPD for further improvement. Observation is such a key part of this process. Horses' experiences are so subjective, so it's important, really important, to be able to pick up on slight behavioural nuances that indicate preferences when horses may be having a negative experience. Fifth, our interactions. The process allows us to consider the horse-human relationship and the influences of our handling, training, and all the interactions with them, and how this is such a vital part, not only on the 5 domains model, but also providing horses with some sense of agency, choice over how they live their lives. We are so often the controlling factor, so how can we make our interactions more of a conversation? Sixth, reflection. And Lisa mentioned this earlier around reflective practice, but a key part of this process is reflection and setting regular catch-ups with the team, and also with Jill, the consultant, to allow us to critically appraise the work we've been doing and how the actions are influencing the horses in our care. Seventh, recording. Ben mentioned it earlier, from behavioural observations to budget planning documents. The process allows us to document and record the steps of interventions in the run-up to reassessing all the criteria we're undertaking. And finally, or almost finally, celebrating strengths. It's very easy to focus on the lower scoring criteria and panic. However, the majority of the criteria we found scored well and sometimes excellent. So it's important to remember that we celebrate when we are already doing well and everything we then possibly can to ensure that horses are having a positive experience almost all the time whilst they're at our farms. And finally, and again, I didn't write this as a result of the previous conversation, the process needs to be horse-led. It's not about making our lives easier, although often it will. It's about what improves the experiences of the horses in our care. So, why the outcomes aren't one size fits all, we recognise that. So, obviously what we've done at our Somerset Centre is not necessarily going to be very easily to translate and transferable for many other yards, because there are so many things that are bespoke to what we do, from what the facilities and environments that we offer to the staff, to the financing, resourcing, and most importantly, the horses at each of our yards or establishments and what's important to them. There will be variation because no two yards are the same. But what is really truly transferable in this whole process is we have worked through to get where we are now and the wide principles of the 5 domains model. So what can we do? Well, you can start by embedding the 5 domains model into all of our practices. And for those who are interested in taking a deeper dive into this, I know, and I've got Jill's contact details shortly, she is certainly very willing to speak to anyone about that. But we're also going to work with Jill over the next few weeks to produce a mini welfare for horses in yards assessment tool. And that hopefully will be available early next year. And finally, for those of you still getting to grips with the 5 domains model, today hopefully will really help. But we have a free PDF guide, which is downloadable from our website, which gives key considerations for each domain and poses questions to encourage self-reflection on each of our practices. So there is Jill's contact details, and I'll certainly share these slides with you, George, so you can circulate that to everyone. And I just thought this quote from Jill was a lovely place to finish. That, you know, we firmly believe that lasting change in animal welfare must be driven from the ground up by animal caregivers, and so by owners, and what you will do every day of the year. George, thank you very much for the invitation to speak. I hope that.
So I had the privilege of going down to Glenda Farm and looking at what's going on, and it was an interesting correlation for me. In your environment, you're dealing with hundreds of horses, often traumatized, often transient, and most of the riding schools we're dealing with are obviously much more, and you would therefore take a systems approach to the whole of the animal welfare things. Most of our schools, of course, have less horses, they're generally not transient. How do you see that juxtaposition? Because it was a different environment. That's what I took out of it.
No, it is very different. And as I say, no 2 yards are the same. But I think the key thing is everything is changing all the time. So it doesn't matter whether we're a rehoming centre or you're a riding school. You've got horses that make up that yard, and they are personalities, as we've already talked. And they're going to change every day, and they'll change for different reasons. So, and what this is helping us do is actually, yes, be able to get those long-term sort of infrastructure changes and training changes and those cultural changes into our mind, but it's also really useful for assessing things day to day too. And that doesn't really matter whether you've got a transient population or not. So I think there is a lot of read across to this, and hopefully once we've got the framework and the tooling rolled out, it's going to be more, I guess, more useful to some than others. But there's no right and wrong way of doing it. Well, there's certainly a wrong way of doing it, but there's certainly no obvious right way of doing it. The 5 domains model there's many different ways we can implement it, but I think it's that mind change that is so important, where we're listening to what the horses are telling us and being guided by that, and not doing what we think is right.
Any questions? Any more questions?
Roly.
Thank you. Thank you
So before lunch,
really important announcement just to make before lunch so that we can coordinate you all to the demonstration area. We've got some minibuses that are going to be taking you to that. So after lunch, I need you to look out all on your badges. You've got little labels that say forage finder. It's been broken up into the 5 domains. So you've all got allocated a group. So I don't know if Carol Bolton, you're in charge of. Do you just stand up and just go quickly? So anyone that is the soundest one is going to need to go with Carol, and we'll do a yell at the end of lunch. Field Masters is Ben Mays. Ben, do you stand up and just say you're coordinating the Field Masters? Yes. Yes.
Master.
Yes, and then we've got forage finders. Julie Pedley is, I don't know where you are. So everybody that could Julie there. Then these are all you groups, they're existing members. So that's great to see how many we've got. And then we've got the Free Spirit, which is led by Jane. And that's our non-members here today. Then we've got the Happy Herd, which is all of our organisations such as the Pony Club and anybody else that sort of fits into that category. If you need to get back to the offices or whatever you're doing, or you're more than welcome to come, but you can network around here, because I know lots of people probably want to talk to each other. And then that's it. So Regina, you're in charge of photography, so.
And which the one the buses first?
So if we do the two, the Sounder Squad and the Field Masters.
So you'll be in the buses first,
yeah.
minibuses first,
Yeah,
going across to the arena, which is about 1.5 miles away, where we've got Catherine Prison with us. Is that what? Is she here? Okay. You can stand, tell us. She's going to take us through a little bit of what I call it, saddle for you, I think we call it. But what we want to do is we want to talk, and I'll be interested in your views on this after. I'm trying to think of whether we can sort of course with the last saddles that the bridal schools could take, about feather fitting and bridal fitting. Since I think it's the 45. So that'll be at 1:30.
yes, sorry, 1:30, should be 1:15.
So 1:30. So if you could be out and on the way by 1:30, because the timings are quite tight, I'd be very grateful. All right. No.